Before this year's grand family vacation to an all-inclusive resort in Aruba, I was feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. This annual trip, featuring a mix of close family members and even some open invitations to other relatives, had its share of challenges. As the matriarch of the family, my mother had been struggling with her health, primarily her weight and resulting mobility issues. Her difficulties walking were compounded by sleep apnea, making her prone to dozing off at any moment. This posed certain logistical challenges, especially when it came to planning physically demanding activities, and it often led to alterations in our plans to ensure her comfort. But her presence was an essential part of our family trips, and we adjusted accordingly. Then there was my brother, a perennial participant who always seemed to have financial woes. Despite his enthusiasm for joining us, he never seemed to afford the trip on his own. This recurring scenario usually played out the same way: he'd express his desire to join us, my mother would step in to help, and we'd end up covering most, if not all, of his expenses. Once on vacation, we'd continue to foot the bill for him and Mom, covering meals, tickets to attractions, and any other expenses they deemed necessary. As the vacation plans for Aruba solidified, I began hearing rumblings from my mother about needing cash for unexpected house repairs, and my brother's job situation didn't bode well for covering his share of the expenses. Simultaneously, my daughter and her husband decided to book the honeymoon suite, adding to the mounting financial concerns. While the stress of these escalating costs loomed, I didn't voice my concerns. The day of departure arrived, and we all made our way to the airport, passing through security and heading toward our respective gates. At this point, my husband and I quietly chose a different path. This unexpected turn led to a barrage of questions and calls from the family members going to Aruba, asking if we could grab them some food from the airport. In response, I informed them that we had changed our minds and decided to embark on a cruise from Miami, leaving our original plans behind. Predictably, my daughter was incensed, her plans for a second honeymoon dashed, and she wondered who would care for her baby. My mother voiced concerns about who would cover certain expenses. My brother appeared utterly baffled, like a pet that had been abandoned. Frustration and accusations flew, with my family labeling me as the instigator of their ruined vacation, branding me as the a-hole.
I had one of those days when you go grocery shopping, and to my delight, I managed to snag a prime parking spot, merely 2 or 3 spaces away from the store entrance. As I finished grabbing what I needed and headed back to my car, things took an unexpected turn. An older gentleman in a vehicle suddenly whipped into the lot, nearly colliding with me. I couldn't help but give him a piece of my mind, admonishing him to be more attentive and cautious. I continued toward my car, not anticipating the events that would follow. This older man, apparently annoyed by my reprimand, drove down an aisle, found the first unoccupied spot to turn around, and drove back up to the front. His purpose became clear: he intended to park right in front of my vehicle. As I loaded my groceries into my car and prepared to leave, I couldn't help but notice that he and his wife were sitting there, just staring at me. The older man exchanged gestures with his wife, and it dawned on me that they were waiting for my parking spot. Their plan was to pull through it when they finished shopping, avoiding the inconvenience of backing out later. My inner prankster was awakened, and I decided to play along. I simply sat in my car, refusing to budge. The older man's irritation became evident as his gestures became increasingly exaggerated and frantic. It seemed like he was determined to make me leave. Eventually, it appeared that the wife managed to convince him to drop the matter, and they started to get out of their vehicle. However, my response was swift. I began to back out, once again infuriating the older man. In a huff, he returned to his vehicle, as if he was going to pull through anyway. I promptly shifted my car into park and waited, much to his dismay. We repeated this bizarre dance of wills 3 or 4 times, each time testing the limits of the older man's patience. His outbursts only made me laugh, further fueling his frustration. I continued to outwait them, and as they eventually entered the store, I drove away, still chuckling at the memorable encounter.
I met this guy at university who made me think all my dreams had come true. We really clicked, everything seemed great. I thought he was mega genuine, caring, did charity work and really aligned with my values. We got to know each other over a month or so. My big mistake being, I ended a 4-year relationship for this guy. Things hadn't been good with my ex for a while, and in those 4 years, I never so much as looked at another guy. But something about this guy drew me in. I would like to add, I didn't cheat, but admit I'm in for what I did, so maybe I deserve what happened to me. I digress. The narc told me that he and his ex had been split for a couple months and he was very much single. After I ended things with my ex, things moved quickly. He was wanting me to stay at his all the time, totally love-bombed me and made me feel like he worshipped me. Promised me he would sort me out somewhere to live, would help me out financially if I left my partner for him. He didn't. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He got a weird phone call one night, wouldn't tell me who it was. Huge argument ensued. He was texting and calling all the time in the beginning, wanting my attention constantly. Then suddenly that stopped. He changed from caring to insanely possessive. Policing my clothes, who I was friends with, who I talked to, what I could tell my family about him, I couldn't drink without him there, etc. Then he was getting me to do things for him all the time, think business admin type stuff, using me for my connections and skills, using my car all the time instead of his, etc. 2 months in, and the red flags were everywhere. It was emotionally draining, toxic and left me severely depressed. Thankfully I saw the light early and ended it. Within weeks, he was planning to move up country to get back with his ex. I was angry at first, but unsurprised. I starting to join the dots and make sense of certain things. She messaged him one day, but the rest of the chat history had previously been deleted. She blocked me on socials too? I thought about reaching out and telling her, but thought better of it. In all honesty, I wanted him to leave and figured she wouldn't listen to me anyway, so what was the point? Fast forward 2 months, and guess who calls? Yep, his ex. At first, I didn't entertain it. I messaged her saying, sorry, but I don't want to get involved. I hope you are okay, look after yourself, I really mean that. I didn't trust that he wasn't there coercing her. She replied later that night, but I didn't see it till the next day. I was nervous but eventually talked to her. Turns out they hadn't broken up fully, they were in contact the whole time and still technically together. She had moved away for work reasons, and he was due to follow her soon. She knew I existed, but had no idea we were together. I was stalking him apparently. Pursuing him. Wouldn't leave him alone. FLOL. Our conversation was a slow burner, as I didn't want to divulge too much, just in case they got back together or it was some kind of weird trap. But eventually we both told each other everything. It was wild. We timelined the entire 2 months and all his lies. I was over it, even though I was still putting my life back together, but she had been with him for much longer, almost 2 years, so she was really broken. She and I talked or messaged every single day for about 2.5 months and helped each other through it. The funny thing is, the night she called me, she was with him and threatened to call me, but he wrestled her for the phone, got physically aggressive, and it was an accidental dial. His aggression cost him though. He owed her money, like a lot, circa 10K, and she told him that if he didn't pay her back that day, she was going to report him to the police. Everything happens for a reason, right? She got her money back. She went abroad within a week of finding out the truth, and after a couple months of us chatting, we got super close. She invited me abroad for a holiday and I went. That was the first time we ever met in person. We had the best time and are still mega close now. He had no idea we spoke. He tried to call me after she left, to cover his tracks, but I didn't want to hear it and wouldn't take the call. We both kept quiet, until that holiday. Then we video called him, together. To say he was speechless is an understatement. That was the most satisfying video call of my life. We both got to say everything we needed to, called him out in the best possible way, and the look on his face, priceless. This is great revenge because we got a beautiful friendship out of a shitty situation. I travel extensively for my job, which means I've spent many nights in countless hotel rooms. On this particular trip, I had an experience that left me both sleep-deprived and, eventually, on the receiving end of some poetic, petty revenge. It all started on the first night of my stay. At 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by the unmistakable sounds of rowdy neighbors next door. It was a party, and it was loud. My initial response was to march over to their door and kindly ask them to tone it down. I knocked, but they deliberately ignored me, as if I didn't exist. Frustration set in, but eventually, miraculously, they began to quiet down. By 3 a.m., all was calm again, but for me, it was too late. Once my sleep is disrupted, it's nearly impossible for me to drift off again, and I had to be up at 5 for work. As I lay there, fuming and cursing my luck, an idea began to form. It was one of those moments when a mischievous plan crystallizes. I decided that my inconsiderate neighbors needed a taste of their own medicine. When I got up at 5:30 a.m., I seized my opportunity. My TV was strategically placed right against the wall we shared, and I had a mischievous idea. I turned it on at full volume, selecting one of those obnoxious reality shows from the Discovery Channel. The volume was so loud that it was bound to seep through the thin hotel walls. I was in an end room, so I didn't have to worry about annoying neighbors on the other side. It was my small, yet satisfying, act of revenge. After a long day of work, I returned to the hotel around 6 p.m., not sure what to expect. I tried to access the side door using my key card, but it didn't work. Keycard issues were not uncommon, so I made my way to the front desk, where the agent reset it without a word. That, I could handle. Keycard glitches were a minor inconvenience, after all. However, when I entered my room, I was met with a perplexing sight. My TV, which I had left blaring earlier, had been turned off. It was at that moment that it dawned on me, my early morning revenge had worked like a charm. The neighbors, presumably unable to endure the constant noise, must have called the front desk to complain about their sleepless night. In an ironic twist, the front desk agent, likely irritated by the inconvenience I had indirectly caused, had deactivated my key card. It was an unexpected and whimsical twist of fate, a dose of my own medicine that I couldn't help but accept. In the end, I supposed that I had earned it, after all.
I had just finished a long, exhausting day at work and was looking forward to the solace of my drive home. Little did I know that a confrontation with an inconsiderate driver was waiting to test my patience. As I merged onto the highway, I suddenly noticed the blinding glare of the bright headlights behind me. It was like a laser beam, searing into my rearview mirror and directly into my eyes. I crouched down in my seat, attempting to shield myself from the relentless assault of light. I switched lanes, hoping to find some reprieve, but those blinding high beams followed me, unrelenting in their intensity. Frustration and irritation started to boil within me. I toggled my mirror, adjusted my speed, and even considered pulling over, but nothing seemed to deter this person from their selfish act. It was as if they were on a personal mission to blind every driver they encountered on the road. With a sigh, I decided to change tactics. I gently eased into the right lane, the one that's often reserved for slower-moving traffic. I allowed this reckless driver to pass me, feeling a brief sense of satisfaction that their blinding headlights were finally behind me. But I wasn't ready to let them off the hook that easily. I reached for my own brights and flipped them on, returning the favor with full force. I tailed them closely, making sure my headlights found their way into the offender's rearview mirror. At this point, it was just the two of us on this deserted stretch of road, and I felt a sense of triumph as I knew my petty revenge was landing on target. For the next 5 miles, I tailed the oblivious driver, my high beams burning fiercely into their mirror. I knew it was annoying and inconvenient, but after enduring their blinding assault for so long, I felt they needed a taste of their own medicine. As I followed them, I couldn't help but smirk in satisfaction, knowing that justice had been served in the form of bright headlights. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me as I trailed them even longer, realizing that my exit was closed, and I had no choice but to continue this illuminating escapade. In the end, it was a silent act of retribution on a dark, empty highway, a reminder that even in the most frustrating situations, a touch of pettiness can bring a strange sense of satisfaction.